breaking news story. And tonight, Governor Mitt Romney right here, right now. Welcome, Governor.
Hey, Greta, good to be with you.
It's nice to see you, sir. Well, the whole city of Washington, the country, is sort of a buzz about the fact that President Obama promised on tape 7, 8, 9 times that the health care debate, discussion, negotiation would be on C-SPAN. If you were President of the United States, would it be on C-SPAN? Do you agree with that?
Well, he made the promise, and if you make a promise like that, you've got to keep it. But there have been a lot bigger promises he's made that he's not kept, and perhaps the most important of which was that he would have this process, an open process. There'd be a bipartisan effort, that there'd be a new style of politics in Washington, and the style that he's brought has been far more of a backroom, if you will, a bribery type of arrangement that we've seen in many, many years.
Why? Why have he made those promises about having it open and that everybody have a seat at the table, for instance? Why, in your opinion, since you don't think that he kept those promises, didn't he or hasn't he?
Well, I can't guess as to what his own motivation was, other than the fact that he has been very, very unsuccessful in his first year, has not been able to accomplish virtually anything, Greta, and as a result, he's really pinning all of his hopes on seeing something happen with health care. And what's occurred, of course, is he's created a monster. This health care bill that's being fashioned by the two houses right now doesn't make any sense at all, and it really ought to be scrapped, and they ought to start over again. But he's got to get some success, so he's pushing so hard. He doesn't want people to see just how ugly the process is and how bad this bill is.
All right. In 2006, when you were governor of Massachusetts, they passed the health care in Massachusetts that you signed. Is there anything that you learned from the Massachusetts bill and what has transpired there, good or bad or indifferent, that would be helpful to the process here for the nation on a national health care?
There's no question there are a lot of lessons to be learned from the Massachusetts experience. The first is issues like getting everybody insured should be solved at the state level, not at the federal level with a one-size-fits-all plan that's put together by Congress. That's number one. Number two, you don't raise taxes on people to put it in place, which they're intent on doing. Number three, you don't put a mandate on businesses. That's not going to create jobs at a critical time like this. Number four, you don't cut Medicare. You don't put the cost of this system on the backs of our senior citizens. Everything about this bill is wrong-headed, and that's why I think the American people are going to reject those that are the sponsors of it.
Well, when you talk about that, we've had the discussion many times here and on the record tonight is that people think that the people who think that this bill is lousy say that next November in the midterm elections, and I suppose 2 years later, is that the voters will take it out on those who voted for it. Here's the problem, though, is that we will have the bill at that point unless we try to make it better now. Do you have any recommendation to try to fix it, try to persuade some of your ideas into this new bill, or are we just stuck with whatever is going to be handed us?
There's no question but that if Republicans were invited to sit down at the table with Democrats and take enough time to do this properly, you could improve the bill. There's been a lot that's been learned, not just in Massachusetts, but other states. By the way, problems to avoid and opportunities that exist. Look, there's a real need for health care reform in this country, but that isn't what's going on right now. This is all about politics, not about helping the American people with a better health care bill. But if people were serious about focusing on health care and improving it, we could achieve some great things here. But I don't think that's in the cards right now. This is something which is being so aggressively pushed. Today, Paul Kirk, for instance, who's the temporary senator from Massachusetts, said that if a Republican is elected in the special election in Massachusetts that's replacing Senator Kennedy, that he, Paul Kirk, will stay in office in order to cast the deciding vote. He won't let the voice of the people decide what should happen with health care reform. They're pulling out all the stops in one of the most ugly partisan processes I think Washington has seen in a long, long time.
What do you make of the Tea Party movement?
I think it shows a great deal of energy and passion on the part of the American people to say, stop, we're going the wrong way, enough already, let's get things right in America. And America is headed in the wrong direction. This growing government, the increase in taxes, the more intrusiveness of government has made a lot of people very angry, and they want to see change in Washington. They want to see the Washington politicians that have been voting for this kind of intrusive government thrown out of office. And I think it's a good thing. I think Washington politicians need to understand there's a lot of focus and energy around what's happening, and people aren't going to take it a lot longer.
Do you worry, though, that it's more of a problem for the Democratic Party, much like in '92 with Ross Perot and George Bush 41, President Bush 41, is that it might, in the end, be something that hurts the Republican Party because it shaves off votes in that direction, or people won't go to the polls because they want Tea Party candidates, not the Republican Party, or there will be a third-party candidate?
Well, if there were a third party and a real intent to create a strong third party, that would obviously be very damaging to whichever party it drew the most votes from. And if it were a Tea Party, why, that would certainly be from conservative Republicans. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think people recognize right now we're not talking about politics, we're talking about the country. This is a really critical time for the country, both globally in terms of our safety and security, but also economically. And if we divide the conservative vote, and therefore hand over to the Democrats more years of single-party rule and Barack Obama another 4 years, we would have a very different country at the end of 8 years of Obama rule. And I don't think in the final analysis that anyone is going to put their personal political aspirations above the needs of the country.
All right, you mentioned security. If it were a President Romney, would you have responded differently than President Obama to this December 25th Christmas underwear bomber on Flight 253?
Well, I think almost anybody who's looked at how the President has handled this has been very, very dismayed. His initial reaction, which was to say this was apparently an individual acting on his own, that was wrong. That was the wrong thing for him to say. And then, of course, he came out and attacked the intelligence community in an aggressive way. And of course, they needed a talking to, particularly the Secretary of Homeland Security. But that's not the sort of thing you leak to the press. The President should have stood up, as JFK did, and said, look, this was my fault. I'm responsible. I'll do a better job. And then deal with your people one by one. But perhaps the biggest fault that I have is that instead of taking this would-be bomber and interrogating him so we could learn the very intelligence that our intelligence community so desperately wants to have, instead of doing that, they decide to lawyer him up and quiet him down so that he can't give us the information we need. The President is more intent on having the people at the ACLU happy than he ought to be. And he should be focused instead on helping the intelligence community in every possible way. Even talk about bringing legal action against members of our intelligence community for the actions they took during the Bush years. All these things has put a chill in the capacity of our intelligence community to carry out its job. And I think the President is making some very serious errors in protecting the country.
Would you have fired anybody? I mean, you know, the thing that sort of stands out, and obviously we don't have all the information on the outside. It's very different than sitting in the Oval Office and having the information on the inside. But on the outside, it seems appalling that someone got information at some embassy in Nigeria, and that for some reason it never made its way to wherever it should have gone to keep this man off the plane, because that was the most appalling information. Would you have fired somebody or asked for resignations?
Well, I don't look for scapegoats, and I don't think you just fire someone just to make it look like you've done something. If there has been somebody who...
Not for that necessarily, because that person, whoever messed up, whoever didn't have the vision for something that seems quite obvious, unfortunately that person's still there and can do another round, can do it again. So it's not to punish, but it's to remove someone from this very important job who might put us at risk again. We got lucky this time. No one was killed.
Yeah, there's no question if in doing the analysis you find out that there were some people who just weren't doing their job or made serious errors in judgment, they shouldn't be in that job. They should be finding another employment where they can be more effective, but they shouldn't be trying to protect the country. So you'd have to look at that carefully, and if someone needs to be fired, you fire them. But I must admit that the Secretary of Homeland Security has been really disappointing in this, and I was surprised that the White House would let her be the spokesperson dealing with this issue as it first came out. She did a very ineffective job of convincing the American people that our government was on top of the security breach.